Welcome to the Josh Hall Web Design Show. Helping you build better websites and create a web design business that gives you freedom and a lifestyle you love.
Hey everybody, welcome into the podcast. This is episode 124, where we're going to be diving into some sales strategies for both web design freelancers and solopreneurs and those of you who are running actual web design agencies. And there is a bit of a different strategy and a set of tactics that you'll likely use as a solopreneur versus an agency with a team. For this talk, I wanted to bring in somebody who has a lot of experience in both of these avenues. This is a repeat guest on the podcast. This is the lovely Anne Stefanyk, who I had on the podcast before. And for those of you who heard her first episode, you know she is the real deal. She is a blast to talk to. She is a wealth of knowledge, and she is the CEO and founder of Kanopi Studios, which I view as one of the best examples of a bona fide and legitimate web design agency and digital marketing agency. At the time of recording this interview, she was actually, or had just hired her 60th team member. So they are legit. Now, for those of you who don't want to take the full-blown agency route, but you still want to have a lot of good tactile strategies for selling as a solopreneur or maybe with a small team, this is still going to be equally as valuable for you because there are some strategies that you can use, for both as a solopreneur and an agency owner, but you're going to find out that some strategies are best suited for being a freelancer versus having a full team with an agency. And that's what we dive into. I found this conversation fascinating. Again, Anne is just awesome. She's the real deal. She did say something that I want to highlight right now before we dive in, because this is such an important takeaway. We dive into this more in the talk here, but it is the idea of the 3 C's. Those 3 C's are connect, converse, convert. And most web designers, and I think most business owners in general, tend to connect with a lead and then immediately want to convert them. They immediately want to sell. But you are missing that all-important middle step, which is the middle C, which is converse. We talk about how to practically do that and how you can guide your clients through the 3 C's, get better conversions, get more great clients, and do that all while without feeling sleazy and salesy. So I'm so excited for you to see what you take away from this episode. Now, before we dive in, if you want to have more time to focus on sales just because you love sales so much, and even if that's not you, if you just want to, try to get by, one of the best things you can do is solidify your process so that your actual website designs go smoothly and they go quickly. That way you can dedicate more and more time to sales, onboarding, and all the other aspects of running a web design business. If your process right now is a scattered and cluttered mess, I'd love to help you out with that. It's why I created my web design process course, which is open and available for you right now to join. I would love to help you solidify and streamline your process. I'm going to show you my complete 5-phase, 50-step process for planning, building, and launching websites. Join that today if interested so you can focus on the thing that I know you love the most in your web design business, which is sales. But in all seriousness, this episode, even if you hate sales, it's going to empower you. It's going to give you some confidence, and I can't wait to hear how it helps you out. Here is Anne. Let's have some fun. Anne, welcome back on to the show. It's so good to have you on again.
Thanks for having me, Josh.
Let's just kick this off the right way and show our coffee mugs, because this was unintentional, but we are both drinking out. For everyone watching this, we're both drinking out of our Mandalorian Star Wars mugs. So I knew I shared a kinship with you, Anne. I had such a blast talking with you in our first episode, which was episode 61. And I reached out to you recently just asking some questions about sales, because my agency, which I'm essentially more of a consultant now, I don't know if you knew this, but I did sell my agency last year. So I'm essentially more of a consultant role. But we are in the process of hiring 2 salespeople. And I have my way of doing sales that I learned as a solopreneur and a freelancer and having a small team, which I teach. But I wanted to talk with you about sales because your agency is at a whole nother level. I'm sure sales have been different through all the seasons of your business. So can't wait to dive into this topic with you. Do you want to let everybody know who maybe hasn't heard that first episode, where you're based out of, and what do you do in your role with Kanopi Studios?
Sure. So again, hi, everybody. My name's Anne Stefanyk. I'm founder and CEO of Kanopi Studios, and We design, build, and support websites for clients that want to make a positive impact. We specifically work in open source. We work in WordPress and Drupal, and we really focus on taking care of the whole life cycle of the website for a client. So we do full-scale builds, but we also do a lot in what we call continuous improvement, where we're always learning and iterating and building the website for the long term. So I've scaled my business from just me. The disclosure that I'll give you is I'm a salesperson first. So that's where I started my career, was actually in biz dev, agency sales, and through a series of fortunate events, I'm now, an agency owner and have gone through and scaled from just myself. So from the very beginning, I've always needed developers. Like I've always needed a team. It was always a bunch of contractors and me running a show. But over the years, as we put together the sales team, and we'll dig into that. But, overall, my role at Kanopi really is just focused on, now we're a team of 60. We just crested 60 today, which is like mind blowing.
Last time I talked with you, I think you were closing in on 50.
Yes, we've had digital is definitely tip of the spear right now, and we've had to just hire really, really enthusiastically to catch up with demand. And we've been really fortunate to just make that a huge priority for the last 2 quarters. But yeah, so what I do, 50% of my time is working on the business as a CEO. So doing leadership type work, culture work, vision work, that type of work. And then the other 50% of my time is spent on business development. I call myself the CEO and the CRO, so the Chief Revenue Officer. So I oversee all of marketing and sales, because now we have 2 full-time sales executives, a sales coordinator, and a marketing director. So we've grown our team over the years from just me doing it all. And I can talk a little bit through that. But generally, that's where I spend my time now, was 50% on the business and 50% in the business. But
now, do you do any
out of delivery?
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you do any face-to-face sales, or should I say Zoom-to-Zoom type of sales?
Always
or
Zoom. Everything Zoom.
Yeah. And do you come in at this level where you're at now? Do you come in on more like high level type projects? I imagine maybe a low level project. I can't imagine you're having to be involved with every cell of Kanopi Studios, but are you just implemented on the ones that maybe are more high level, or the ones that you're most interested in? How does that work with where you're at?
I love that question because I'm actually generally aware of everything that's going on in the pipeline, but I'm not always in everything that goes on in the pipeline. So for example, we have learned over the years that through our qualification process, the most important thing to do is say no early and get things out of our queue really early, so we don't waste our time on stuff. So the stuff that actually is nurtured and worked on is really qualified to work with us. And as we scaled, we've had to adjust what that qualification bar is. So for me, I generally work the bigger opportunities. So I spend more time on the larger builds or more strategic accounts. We have, Tanya takes care of kind of the higher ed and support, continuous improvement department. Jim takes care of the builds, as well as works on, reimagines. They work really closely together. So it's a matter right now of where I am is a little bit of just, I need to understand the details of the deal so I can coach and help the person. But I'm not going to lie, when we do a sales scrum, they have to give me a 411 on what's going on that client when they're asking for support on an opportunity, right?
Sure, yeah. And if anyone's curious about how Kanopi, your business, is managing clients and working with them over a life cycle, definitely check out Anne's first episode 61, because you basically pulled the curtain back on how you guys do that, which was awesome. Now, I want to start off with a question that may be easy to answer. It may be kind of hard to answer. I don't know where it's going to take us, but as we talked about before we went live, this is not scripted. We don't have bullet points we're walking through. We're going to have some fun talking about sales. I'm very curious. What is the biggest difference between sales for Kanopi Studios now compared to when you started, when it was just you?
Oh gosh, when it was just me, it was everything just me. And that's great, a great place to be. The one thing I wished I had done earlier when I was an earlier person was just kind of write down what I do a little bit more in real time, like document in real time. So generally I feel like if you're a founder, if you're a solopreneur, sales will always be on your plate. You will not be able to get rid of it. It is something that will always be part, because you are the voice and the face of your organization. If you are the solopreneur, you're definitely the voice and the face. As you scale to a small agency, that founder energy is really important for both the leadership of your team and the engagement of your clients. So you'll still sell, right? So you can never really hand off sales fully to anybody. Because when you, and especially if you do that, then they quit. You have 2 weeks notice and you're like, what's going on with sales? It's actually the most fundamental thing in terms of the health of the business, is having a really healthy sales strategy. And I think what I learned early on is that I built my business from word of mouth and referral. So what happened was I was a, entrepreneur that was like, okay, I've decided to start this business, going to get some projects. I'm going to go talk to my network. And I asked questions and I asked for advice. So I went to other CEOs of other agencies and I said, hey, I'm starting this. I need some advice. And then I would get on a Zoom call with them. And they're selling projects at the time that were like 100K plus, right? Here I'm like, if I get a 10K project, I'm like stoked, right? And that was the difference of then to now, right? Or even bigger now. But back in the day, I would call these other agency friends and they were always happy to help a budding entrepreneur. And in the end of the call, what they ended up doing was sending me work. I didn't ask for work. It wasn't like I was like, oh, do you have some work? And everybody that does that to me now is like, yeah. But when a young entrepreneur or someone who's enthusiastic about growing their business comes to me and says, can I jump on the phone for advice? I'm like, yes. And then we do that. And I'm like, oh, this is your super skill? Oh, I'll send you projects like that. Let me introduce you to my sales team, because we don't do $10,000 projects anymore. Our minimum threshold is like 100K for support, right? If we're doing builds, they're like 250 now, right? That's the scale of where we are. We're just doing bigger projects for bigger brands. Then I couldn't do that. So when I was there, I was like, referrals and word of mouth became the nature of how I was nurturing new work. And I can tell you that now, 10 years later, as we kind of build out this business in full, the word of mouth and referrals is still a very healthy pipeline of work. But I've had to put other fishing poles in the ocean, right? And get out there and start fishing other ways. But still, to this very day, when we track all of our leads, where they come from, what's the most successful sale, word of mouth and referral is still the easiest to close, the best types of clients, the most like the clients that we love. Stuff that we do have a lot of strategic SEO and Google work we're doing. And those are great clients too, as we've honed in how we're doing that work, but they're colder. So they take more to warm up. They take a whole different level of, like, we know that when a lead comes in from Google, we have an extra level of stuff we have to do to build trust than if it's word of mouth and referral. So I got scared as a young salesperson, being like, all my work is coming from word of mouth and referral. And that's when I started putting in the more, holes into the pond or the ocean or whatever you want to say there.
Well said. I mean, I think that I don't know how much more we need to dive into, because what you just said was basically what I envisioned as far as the progress of sales from when you were just you expanding your network to now as a big team. I am curious about those other fishing poles, which we'll dive into, but I just want to hit on that point, because what you said there with just talking to your existing network, that is sales tip number one. Utilize your existing network, professional or personally. That's exactly what I did. It's funny. And the more successful entrepreneurs and web designers I talk to, I'm astounded at how many people just ask questions to other business owners. And just, it really is amazing. You might think you might be bugging somebody, and maybe somebody is too busy to talk with you, and that's fine. Don't take it personally. But I did the same thing. I reached out to every business owner I knew when I first got started. I don't have it on I have a standing desk in the corner, and I've got a little manila folder of, I still have all my notes from little pages from back in 2009 and 2010. And I met with business owners in all different industries. I talked about sales, and they gave me some really good stuff. Even though they were in different industries, they gave me some really good stuff. And to your point, suddenly they knew I was in web design. It was like one of the first kickoffs for my professional network. And those did subsequently lead into some other referrals. So sales tip number one, use your existing network. I love hearing that it's still important to you now as it was back then, because I wondered, I don't have experience myself in an agency of your size. I've never worked for one. I know friends who have been in some, but I didn't really know what the sales looked like. So, when you first get started as a solopreneur, as a freelancer, the most common things that I teach and recommend and that are pretty natural is like networking groups, any sort of meetups, whether it's WordPress related or other industries, any business to business type groups, Chamber of Commerce. I'm talking face to face kind of stuff. Do you guys still do that? Do you have your sales team, or what does the organic referral type of stuff look like for you guys now?
Sure. So I guess pre-COVID, I definitely did a little bit more boots on the ground type work. So I'm usually based in San Francisco. That's where I usually mail from. I've been up north to Canada during the pandemic, and I'm still here. Vaccines are a little slower up here, and the border's still closed, so I'm still here. But that's okay. Having a good time. But the thing is that we used to do a little bit more. We did events before, and I think that we put a lot of money into conferences. And during the pandemic, we pivoted that to more digital marketing and SEO, like hiring, like as an agency, it's kind of like the cobbler's kids have no shoes. Like, I love our website, but I also don't. Like, there's so much I want to do with it, and we just don't have capacity because we're busy doing client work, right? Yeah. So from an SEO standpoint, we just had to write a ton and just really get into the right places. We ended up hiring an agency to support us from an SEO standpoint and pivoted all of our event money. And we did a couple of different trials. We did outbound, and we tried that for 6 months, and then we put money into SEO, and we kind of measured which one gave us the better return on investment. And hands down, 100% the SEO one did, versus it was really hard to do cold calling in our industry because the marketers are really jaded.
Oh, yeah.
But one thing we did really ramp up, and we found that over the years, this has been a tactic I would use for the beginning and even until now, which is LinkedIn, which is just doing, connect with everybody you meet on LinkedIn.
That's great. It's funny. We were
have a sales call for every single client, connect with them all, and then post meaningful content. You'll keep top of mind.
We were just talking about that in my web design community about the power of LinkedIn and how untapped it is. And yes, it's a bit of a stiff corporate environment. Like, I feel like I should wear a button up if I'm going to be able to go on there. But if you have fun engaging videos and content and you're just yourself, you can really make a big impact. And I am curious because I want to know how you target the right type of clients, not only with LinkedIn, but also with SEO. I guess I'll ask you about LinkedIn now and then maybe we'll dive into SEO. But when it comes to like LinkedIn, what are your recommendations on how to go about that? Because it is nice because you don't have to actually like drive to a networking event and meet a bunch of people you don't know. And it's still getting out of your comfort zone going into a social media platform like LinkedIn, but it's not quite as daunting as an in-person thing. So what are some of the strategies on that? Is it posting a lot of free, valuable content there and then starting conversations, just having a serve over sell mentality? What are some of your tips on LinkedIn specifically?
Okay, so we'll take it like actually 10,000 feet up and talk about when you're working with a prospect, you have to essentially connect with them, then you need to converse with them, and then you convert them. You can't go from connect to convert. There's this in-between part that's really important. So you'll probably, if you're on LinkedIn, like I get, 10 requests a day that are like, buy my services. Here we have this. We have developers, people over there. We can do UX. And I'm like, I can buy from you. I want to talk to you. So if you're going to use LinkedIn for networking, the most important part is to remember, where does LinkedIn fit into your flow of how you connect with a lead, right? So there's certain amount of work that you'll do to fill your funnel, which is all of your lead generation type work. And then you'll have, when they go into your pipeline, how you work them through your sales funnel. And then when they pop out, it's not just like the end of the road. Then you want to talk about client services and how to retain a client, how to keep a client for the long term. So there's kind of like 3 parts to a sales thinking in terms of revenue. Like, how do we get the leads? How do we nurture the leads? And how do we convert and keep the leads? So if we're in that, where LinkedIn falls into play, it falls into a play in a bunch of different places in there. Right? It falls into play that if you do end up one of the ways that we've strongly used LinkedIn is that if we were going to an event, right, what we will do is we'll try to get a list of who's coming to the event. So if we're a sponsor, if we think about it, if there's a list of 2,000 people and we're a sponsor, and let's say it's $2,000 to sponsor, and then we get that list, right? That's $1 per lead.
Gotcha.
How many of those are going to be qualified? Based on our experience going to events, maybe 10% of them are even want to buy a website sometime in their life, right? Whenever that is. So that's 200. So then out of that, how many are going to buy from us, right? And we can kind of do some numbers and crunch to see if it's a valuable investment. And if we can get that list and hone down and then filter it by all the director of marketers, then what we'll do is we'll do a casual reach out on LinkedIn that's like, hey, I both see we're going to this event. I'm really excited to meet you there.
Gotcha.
Connect here in the meantime. No ask, no sale, no blah, 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 blah. Ultimately, you could also see if you have common connections. You can say, hey, it looks like we have a common connection. I see you're also going to this event. Hope to see you there. Okay. So what happens is you pop into their LinkedIn and they're like, oh, who is this person? But then they're at the event and then you meet them and they're like, oh,
yeah, you're that guy. Yeah, that girl. Yeah.
Right. And then when you're at the event, they can be like, oh, nice to meet you. Let me get your email. Let's set up a time to chat. Right. And then you have another channel. Like LinkedIn is another form of communication that business people are willing to communicate with you, but they won't just give you information. So if you jump into a group and you're like, oh, all these people have the same interests, I'm going to start messaging them all. You're probably going to get very little response, right?
Yes.
It's more about how do you, if you do go to a Chamber of Commerce networking thing, find them all on LinkedIn and connect with them all on LinkedIn right there and say, hey, it was lovely to meet you, right? All you have to say is like a connection. Because again, all you're doing connecting. And then the conversing part is you're going to post stuff that hopefully you've chosen the right director of marketing to connect with. They might not need a website today, but in 2 years they do. And all of a sudden you post something about accessibility of forms for, making sure your website forms are accessible or whatever. And they're like, oh, that's interesting. That person I met there. I had someone pop up on LinkedIn from one of our clients. Now I've been connected with them for 7 years.
No kidding.
Like, Marty, right? All of a sudden, Marty out of the woodwork's like, hey, I want you to help me with my, we're doing this big Drupal project, Drupal 7 migration. I'd love for you to help, right? 7 years later.
Yeah.
So LinkedIn has this secret, sowing nature. It's like a garden. You just have to plant seeds. You shouldn't expect anything to convert out of it, but it's a tool you could use during the process.
So 2 thoughts on this. First of all, the 3 C's, genius. I think I've heard a lot of variations of this, but I don't know unless I just wasn't paying attention. But the idea of connecting, conversing, converting, that really is the sales cycle, not just on LinkedIn, but in general. And even with what I do, I'm not in service work anymore, but with my students, the way they come through is this same path. They connect with me somehow with a freebie or a tutorial or something. And then for me, the conversation isn't one-on-one. It's more like they get into my podcast, they watch more videos, they get to know me, they get to know how I can help and be their guide. And then the conversion happens once they feel comfortable and once they feel like they know, like, and trust me. And it was the exact same with sales. When I joined my networking group, it was connecting first, getting to know everybody, conversing. I was very not salesy. I just tried to share what I knew and what I was learning. And then that's when the conversion started happening. So I back you up on that, Ann. That is such a great little
And it's all just about being authentically human and helpful, right? I always go into conversations with people, and especially when you're qualifying them, just be like, I'm here for you to help you, even if we don't work together. I want to help you because the web design industry is somewhat confusing, and we understand this isn't your day job, right? And giving yourself as a resource to them as you're working through this. So if they maybe don't work with you because their boss says, no, a website has to be $5,000 versus $10,000 or $50,000, so whatever the barrier is, they'll still have you in their minds. When they switch jobs, they'll call you.
That's
right?
true. That is true. I had numerous jobs from the same person that was in different companies. Totally. And it was amazing. Yeah. Once you just keep that kind of connection. Now, my second thought on the link.
Second, before we move on to the thought, I just want to quote, I actually, in 2016, part of my growth was that I was hustling sales all by myself. And I'm a big believer of getting help. I'm a big believer of coaches, of finding someone that's smarter than you to teach you what you need to know. So I hired a sales coach in 2016. His name is Scott Sambucci. He is Sales Qualia, and that's his 3 C's. Okay.
That's beautiful.
And I'd love to drop his information in the show notes because he helped me codify what was in my head. He helped me really put it on paper and customize it, but he also taught me a bunch of fun sales stuff. And I can, of course, share a few tricks here, but I would definitely encourage anybody that's looking for a little bit of help actually to reach out to Scott and just he helps entrepreneurs get from no revenue to revenue. That's his specialty. So if you are interested in what his coaching programs are, and he has a lot of value adds like ebooks and stuff. So you could, but that's a good resource that I'd love to share with your network.
We'll put that in the show notes. That sounds great. And the beautiful thing about sales is it's not dependent on just web design. Like sales is universal. It applies to all different industries. Yeah, we could get tactile with more web design specific things. And I've got some web specific strategies for sales, but at the end of the day, connect, converse, convert, that's universal. The second thought, why I wanted to hone in on LinkedIn there is that LinkedIn is an interesting platform. I never really used it myself. I have a profile, but I can't even tell you the last time I logged in. Probably haven't logged in like 3 years or something. I just don't use it. Now, if I were doing service work as a web designer today, I would 100% be on LinkedIn. I would probably be on that more than Facebook, more than Instagram, because it attracts professional people, and generally, and maybe you can speak to this, Anne, with something like LinkedIn, people are a little more open to business talk, whereas Facebook is going to be either more just family kind of stuff connection, or it's going to be, divisive and political. Instagram's more just kind of fun. Now, there's a lot of value in Instagram marketing, I know now too, but there is something that's interesting about whether it's a digital space or an in-person space, that is, you're there for business. And I think that's the power of LinkedIn and with some of these networking groups and stuff like that. And the reason I mentioned that is I want to hear from you about your sales team and where are they getting some of these more like hot leads when it comes to organic and referral? Obviously, you talked about SEO. That's great because if you do content marketing, you position yourself as an authority. You become the person they go to. It's a great way to kind of start that lead. But when it comes to all these other avenues like networking and stuff like that, how are you targeting the right type of clients, I guess? I guess that's the question.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It's definitely evolved over the years. I think we intentionally do self-work at Kanopi where we're working on our personas. I think I mentioned this the last one, we leverage the entrepreneurial operating system, or EOS, to run our business. And part of that really hones down into a 2-pager business plan. But we've done a lot of work on our personas per se. So we have our key personas we're targeting, and we also have our anti-personas, the people that we don't work with. So the sales team can be really clear of how these people need to buy our services and what their common, what they're looking for value versus what their common objections are and so forth.
Yeah. Real quick, I'm sorry, and I didn't mean to cut you off, but this is such an important point because I learned early on, it was just as important to clarify what I don't do as opposed to what I do as far as the services. And that's the same importance as the type of clients. It's important to know who you're going to work with and who is ideal versus who is not ideal, and to get them out as quickly as possible, right?
Yeah. We always say in sales, let's get to the no. Let's just get to the no, because we don't want to waste anybody's time, right? Let's figure out who we need to move through. But if there's a real clear, and we have a list of things that we've made that help the other team members understand what not qualified is. But we do find the personas are really helpful. For example, we really shied away from doing agency work. We're a big enough agency, but if we work with another agency, we can't use their work on their website. Often it's not our design. It just doesn't really work for us. And that's agency Amanda. Then that's our anti-persona, right? And then we also don't really enjoy doing staff augmentation. We find that working on somebody else's code with that person, who sometimes maybe is not as we have a very rigorous coding review process and so forth, it doesn't really work for our team. They get a little bit grumpy when they have to clean up somebody's mess over and over and over again, right? It's just adopt code, clean it, move on versus constant. So that's augmentation Arnold. So when Tanya and Jim hear these, people come up and say, oh, I want you to do the development. We're going to do the design. You're going to work with our developer. They can say, okay, no, thanks. We don't do that work, right? Versus we have Support Stacy, which is our, support marketer that really needs to get the job done, doing the basics of the web maintenance, but also some basic enhancements. Then we have a Premier Patty, who is enterprise level, who's, we're working, as fast as we possibly can. They sometimes have 4 to 10 websites, it's all busy. And then we have our more traditional Trey, which is our big build projects, right? And we really have personified them in terms of their team size. And when we're talking about our target market, it's so field of dreams, secret, you build it, they will come. It's amazing sometimes when you actually really clearly articulate what you want in your personas, it's amazing how much that sometimes almost shows up, right? When you're clear of what your boundaries are, what you will and won't take. And when I'm doing that kind of thinking, we're also thinking, okay, I know at Kanopi right now at our scale, we have a sweet spot with marketers. If they're one marketer, they're too small for us. They can't afford us. If they're a team of 30 marketers, they're too big, complicated, too many internal things that they already do in-house. We need someone who has a team of 3 to 5 to 7. It's like 3 to 7 marketers that are in their team. So they have enough velocity to work with us at a cadence that's needed, and they can afford us and they want us at that level where they're very value driven. But we know that automatically when we're looking at a company and we're saying, oh, you're a team of, 5,000 team members globally and your marketing team is 35 people, we're probably not the right fit.
Gotcha.
Right? Some of those signals that we've done that we've had to identify. Another good signal is we work a lot with mission-driven clients and we love them, but often because of the scale of our business, we are just too expensive for many nonprofits, right? There's a threshold, right? So we know that if they have less than, $1 million to $2 million in operating budgets, they're not going to be able to afford $100,000 to $200,000 website or website program so we figured, okay, we built a referral network, send all the small clients their way, right?
Beautiful.
Because people need to get service, but we just can't, right? We just know that.
Yeah, you send them to Anne from 10 years ago. Yeah.
She's like, yeah, we got a fun project to work on, or, we help people just get to the right spot, we hope. But that generally gives us, we know client size, we know team size, we know operating revenue, we know the target personas. We know someone that wants to just come in for 3 months, build a website and leave. We actually don't want to work with them, even if they are target persona, because we're invested in the long term of the website. They're not a good fit.
Yeah.
So it's very black and white at the beginning, right?
That's great.
Figure out what that is for you.
I think that's a really good model. I hadn't really thought about it like that, but yeah, having those different personas like that. And of course, to the average freelance web designer who's just maybe earlier on in the journey and they're working with small to medium-sized businesses in their local town, that's a great way to go. Is you could probably, whether it's maybe by revenue or by industry, if you're going niche, there's different ways you could create these little personas. And then I would imagine you probably know pretty quick where these people are going to fall into these projects or these personas, and then you can either weed them out, send them on, refer them on, or really target the ones who are a good qualified lead. For me, the biggest thing I learned with sales, apart from actually getting traffic in the door, was to identify very quickly, is this a qualified lead or a questionable lead? Qualified goes to me directly. I'm going to reach out to them. I'm going to take some time to nurture this relationship and converse, like you said. Questionable, they go to my funnel. I have I teach this in my business course. I have a whole funnel for qualified or questionable leads as opposed to qualified. So it sounds like it's a variation of that. And this is why I wanted to talk with you about sales, because there's so many different ways to go about it. You guys are at a much different and higher level now with these, big projects, big companies. One thing I was curious about was your sales team. You said you're not really doing any in-person type of face-to-face kind of stuff. Is your sales team doing more of this nurturing, once they come through from SEO leads and stuff like that? Or what is your sales team actually doing? Are they helping people get from interested to crossing the finish line? Or are they doing any sort of cold outreach? What is your sales team doing at this level?
We always have this big dream of doing cold outreach. We're like, oh, we want to go after these target accounts and we're going to do this outbound strategy. And in the end, what happens is we've done so much work with our inbound strategy, both from word of mouth and referrals, with also doing some strategic SEO work. We also have done events in the past. Obviously, the ROI on events in the last year and a half have been dismal. We'll probably do some events, but we'll be very targeted at our events and how we do them in the future. But most of the stuff that the sales team right now is working on is inbound, right? And inbound has come from organic SEO, word of mouth and referrals, partners. So if you are a solopreneur going and finding an agency that can feed you work, that's a really great pipeline that you don't have to worry about sales. But, and even if you start, that might be one of your personas. An agency Amanda might be a really good persona for you, or, the business Bobby might be a really good, in-person relationship you have. When the team members right now, what we've done is, okay, everybody knows I love Mike Michalowicz. If you listen to the last podcast, right, he has a wonderful book called Profit First, which I highly recommend no matter what scale you are. The next book called Fix This Next really talked about how you can build your business sustainably and where you need to go. And he has you won't see this, maybe you can put it in the show notes, but there's like a printout I'm holding up here. And the bottom one really is about sales, and sales is the fundamental. Like, I couldn't bring on a sales team until I had some repeatable processes and some of the stuff that I started building. And that was really intentional in 2016 when I hired this sales coach. Because I hired, like, just to give you folks all some context, like, I'm a sales girl from the beginning of when I've always done agency stuff, but I've never grown a sales team or actually built a business in this scale, right? So when I was in 2016 and I recognized I need to create more sustainability, I focused on how to create a repeatable sales process, because I kept hiring sales engineers and salespeople and it's failing, absolutely failing. And why it failed is that because I really, didn't have a good process that was documented, that was repeatable, that other people could leverage. And then two, I was going for the wrong person. I didn't realize that I was trying to hire somebody, but it wasn't the person I was supposed to be hiring. I was trying to hire someone who would be like my technical sales co-engineer, or someone who could help with outbound. So I tried like technical sales engineering kind of developers that wanted to be there, or I also tried an outbound, like a BDR, and I tried leveraging kind of an admin in a very basic way. And what happened is that when I decided to really look at, with Scott Tambucci, and I sat down, I then looked at what was hurting me, right? Was it the lead generation? Was it getting them through the pipeline, or was it keeping the clients, right? Again, those three phases of when you're thinking about client sales. And that's when I really realized that I had two problems. One is that I didn't have, once they got into the pipeline, I didn't have as much problem closing them. I had a pretty good close ratio because I'm a salesperson, and I didn't have a problem keeping them, but I had a problem with lead gen and actually helping get stuff off my plate to move them through things like on a skillful level. So we shortened the pipeline from like a 3-month close to an 8-week close. And we built out like a documented, like how people go through things. And at that time, I really started thinking about, okay, part of his sales coaching was have an authority voice, make sure that you're creating value, right? Build a content repository of ebooks and so forth, right? And so what happened was, as I got a little bit more of this documented, I decided, and this is based on his coaching, was hire an admin person that can help you with just spinning up documents, or that can help you with just booking the calendar in, that can help you with taking notes on your calls, that can help you with just the basics. Don't try to hire a salesperson right now. Hire someone who can take stuff off your plate. And what happened was, is as I did this, and I feel like fate was part of all of this, because this girl named Tanya showed up. She applied for a different job, but I kind of looked at it and I was like, you could be in sales. You could do this. You could just take stuff off my plate. And with her help, I hired her, because what Scott had also said is, if you don't have the capacity to sit down and write everything down, hire somebody to follow you around. And so that's what we did. And that was our first salesperson, was really, I feel like,
yeah, that's one of the most important things with any business when it starts to become, because when you're a solopreneur, it's all in your head. And I can't understate the value of having some sort of SOP, a standard operating procedure, ideally in the majority of things that you're doing. But sales does seem to be one of those things that you just neglect as an operating procedure. But there really does need to be an intentional outline of that for people if they're going to follow. Because like you said in the beginning, Anne, you as the founder, everything kind of rests on your shoulders with the vision of the company, the feel of the company, how sales go. So this is a perfect time to ask you, when do you think is the time, if there's a time, to go from just you doing the sales to a team? Because I think when it comes to inbound, like organic, referral related versus more outbound, more like ads and that kind of stuff, there's a big difference between those two types of sales. And we've talked about the difference between kind of a hot lead and a cold lead. The one problem I had with referrals is because my business was 100% referral based, and it did me really well. But I did have seasons where I had a lot of referrals one month and I had like barely any referrals the next month. Referral leads and a lot of inbound strategies, I feel, are kind of like rain. it will rain, but you just don't know always when it's going to rain. Whereas I know a lot of people focus on more targeted, like controlled type of leads with outbound. But I guess that kind of leads us to the question in that, with that idea of inbound versus outbound, when is the time to grow from just you doing the sales to maybe bringing somebody on? And do you think it's worthwhile bringing two people on? Because I've heard that idea too, to have two salespeople, because anytime you get salespeople competing with each other, sometimes it can be a really healthy thing. What are your thoughts on that?
So I guess it all depends. I'm a big fan of not paying by commission, because I believe there should be value in what they do, and that they're not trying to sell something to make a dollar. They're doing something for the best for the person. So there's a couple questions you had there. First off, when to hire a salesperson really kind of depends on your revenue and what you can sustain, right? So you may find that if you've crested over, like if you're not getting to everything and you're not getting to sales, then you will have a problem in your business, straight up. So you'll have to dedicate time in your calendar for sales no matter what, even when you hire someone, whether that is coaching and training and mentoring and supporting and dealing with clients that are going through the process. But when it's time to hire a salesperson, I always find that the solopreneurs, they actually first should hire an admin who can help with some of the sales infrastructure pieces.
Okay.
So in some ways, if you're a founder, like it's just you and you're just going after things and you're not planning to scale really huge or even to 8 or 12 people, I feel like you need a dedicated salesperson. When you have like eight people or more, it would be helpful to have somebody. A lot of the times I see smaller agencies having like a blended role where this person will do some account services and be billable, right? There's that role where sometimes they'll do sales and account stuff. Like I was only able to hire my second sales executive. I was only able to hire one with Tanya coming on board, 4 years ago. It was around 2017, pardon me, this last year.
Okay, wow.
So I've scaled to 60 to be able to afford a second salesperson because they're fully non-billable, and I'll pay them well so they don't have to worry about hustling the wrong project for commission. So for me, what worked for me, and this might not work for everybody, is that first hire like a sales admin to actually like take the stuff off of the plate. That's just the real basic stuff, help you operationalize. And then when there's enough work on the pipeline that will both you have enough incoming leads to support a salesperson and you have enough revenue to support that person. And again, that's why I leverage that profit first model. So I can do bit modeling with my money to say, if I add, a high paid salesperson that's going to know what's going on, how does that operate in my budget? Can I afford that over the long term? Because if you hire a new salesperson, you have to give them a full 6 months before you expect anything. You have to reduce all of your expectations. So you want to hire the right person. And that's why I get nervous about hiring two, because if you're doing it to see which one works out, that's expensive, right? Gotcha. I would say choose the right one and then move forward with that one really intentionally, because you have to spend quite a bit of time with them, even if you have a bunch of stuff documented. Now, if you're hiring two and you have and again, if you don't have any leads coming in and you're expecting a salesperson to go and get leads, that's also incorrect, because the salesperson is taking care of that middle part. That's what they're trained to do. If you want to get someone who's going out and getting leads, you need to hire a BDR, a business development rep. Right?
Okay. So that's great. This kind of hits back to the question I had a little bit ago about what are these salespeople doing? And it sounds like they're more probably in the middle stage of conversing and nurturing, usually, getting them. Yeah, getting through the door. So that business development type, like getting the actual traffic, the leads, which we've already hit on a lot of the strategies that you guys are implementing. I am curious because I'm sure when you were early on, Anne, I imagine you were, being that it was your business, were you doing any like networking events and stuff? I mean, I know this was back in 2010, 11. Were you doing stuff like that?
I definitely think that like hosting partners, for example, hosting partners are wonderful, especially if you're starting to bring bigger deals to them. They'll give you pretty big deals. We're friends with all of our hosting partners. I'm presenting at WP Engine Summit tomorrow, or whenever this is probably in the past when everybody will hear that. But the things are that the relationships that we've built over time have come from a combination of in-person and nurturing online. So again, it'll be going to a conference, meeting a bunch of people, connecting with them. Pre-pandemic, we would host like breakfast meetups. and invite clients and like clients, potential clients and so forth. But honestly, the ROI, compared to an online webinar event that's really targeted, we find has been way more effective than my in-person events. So webinars has been a great fishing pole that we've put in and we barely do webinars, right? Which is kind of hilarious. Just because it's generating content from our peoples, which are so busy. So
there's another great sales tip for every web designer that can absolutely host any sort of webinar or free training. And I learned this when I was in a networking group, because we would have like every few months, we would have our turn to present. And I always found when I presented on something, whether it was the basics of SEO or how to understand Google Analytics or anything like that, I would always get such interest. And then I often got quite a few jobs after those. And it was like, well, duh, maybe I should do more of those. I can do those at scale, or I can do that in a bigger, not just this group, but a larger market. So that is absolutely key. And it really is so valuable. So your sales team now, it sounds like what might be different about your sales team versus if any one of my audience are interested in getting into the next level of sales is that you have such an established brand that they probably came into it with more established partners and relationships and processes. Whereas, a freelancer who maybe is growing a small team, if they want to get help, I guess that's the next question I have for you. On a lower level, let's say Anne in like 2013, what would you advise her to do in regards to sales to really get to that next level and to have more of a consistent pipeline?
Yeah, I think that is fortunately, I just love selling in the way that I love helping people. So in that, back in the day, I think the biggest thing that I did is my business advice I got from my mentor when I first started the business was whatever you put in your petri dish will grow. And I often sometimes almost ignored some of those spidey sense things where I was like, oh, this is going to be maybe kind of weird, but we'll make it work. Right. And then that hey, that's going to be kind of weird came up, So I would say the biggest thing is that another thing I got from one of my coaches is when I was like, he's like, don't run your business from gut feelings, run it with data because you will get gut rot. You have to run your business with data. Because before I was like, I think I need to hire. Oh yeah, I think I need more sales. There was this like hustle of magic that back in the day, I was just kind of running as fast as I could and not really had vision. But there was also I was early on, right? And early on in 2013 to 2016, there were some chaotic moments of bumps and of the agency of learning that we scaled to 36 and had to shrink back to 22 pretty quickly. And laying that off was really hard, right? But we had a bunch of projects go, the ones I was like, oh, I'll be fine, weren't fine, right? And then we had to kind of clean it up. But through all that, I think the biggest thing is again, whatever you put in your petri dish will grow. And sometimes it's scary to say no, but it's better to say no because you'll leave space for the right project. It's better to, and again, this is why I wish I would profit first because I probably wouldn't have gotten in so many hairy spots. But there is something about like back in the day, the biggest thing I'd say to all the people, wherever you are in your journey, is to just say no to the wrong things early on. Dig into the things that are right. The one thing that I got a really great blog post from my director of marketing, Allison, from Seth Godin. He writes, famous writer, and he talked about like your busyness may be your demise because you're known to be so reliable because you know that you'll get the job done. You will have lots of work. But if you don't learn how to navigate that work, you could become flooded and then not be able to be reliable and start losing clients.
Yeah.
And we felt this at Kanopi because we had such a demand for digital. All our clients like, hey, we need more. And then we had new clients and I didn't have enough staff and I could see things falling, right? I can't stop it because I just don't have enough hands. So it was like this terrifying moment of like, we're doing a good job, but we are doing almost like we can't service all of the needs. So we've had to kind of figure out how to gently take care of the clients. And I feel like that's at the same stage as even if you're one person. If you take on too many projects at once and then you piss off all 3 or 6 of your clients, then you're not going to have clients that are going to refer you work. If you take on 3 strategic ones or 2 strategic ones and know that, okay, I'm in development here, I'm going to need a new project in 2 months so I can schedule the next one for 2 months. So, kind of think about your pipeline more than just what's happening tomorrow. But there's this element of, I see a lot of single entrepreneurs get out, get excited, hustle as much as they can all of a sudden. And I think that as you go through that, if you don't take on the right projects and have like normal works, like work doesn't need to be like work should be very calming and enjoyable. If it's stressful, something has to change.
Yeah.
And if it all of a sudden comes tax time and you have no money and you're stressed out about something that like this, like then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I got to go sell something. It's like, no, put yourself on a tax payment plan with the IRS or CRA and sell the right thing. Don't sell at a desperate
sale. Yeah. And clients can sniff out desperation in a heartbeat. Yeah. Yeah. That's for me, I was a solopreneur for a long time with occasional subcontractors. And then I got to the point where I've said this before on the podcast. I think it was like 23 projects I had basically all myself. And I was like, oh man, it was just like a flood. Which, yeah. I know some people think that's a good problem to have. It was awesome to have a lot of work, but it was a problem. And I was like, how the heck am I going to get all this done? That was the situation that forced me to hire somebody to take over the deliverables and the actual fulfillment of design. And I could focus on more of the processes and project management stuff. And I think that is really important to think of early on, because you can't get to a point where you just want to get as many clients as you can. But unless you have your processes in place to do the work, do it well, and to fulfill that and to be able to handle both, that's heads up. That's the most important thing. It honestly is more important to have that in place than to get a bunch of clients, because if you get 10 clients and they all end up unhappy because you did a terrible job and it took forever, that's worse than getting your systems and processes in place, getting a few clients and doing a really good job, and then all of a sudden you get the referral train. And I think this is another really important, I'm sure you'll back me up on this, Ann. There is a time where you do have to hustle a little more and do more sales, particularly early on. You got to make those connections. You got to get out there, get out of your comfort zone, whether it's webinars, free trainings, networking, SEO, whatever it is, all these tactics we've talked about. But you do get to a point where I've found that sales tend to come along more organically and referral based when you take care of your current clients. Yes. And I see you smiling because I have a feeling that's what you guys transitioned to. I don't know when that was. When was that? When did you guys go from needing to really sell and get a lot of, get your brand out there versus, okay, we've got a lot of good clients, let's take care of them, and then that'll take care of our business? When did that change and transition happen for you?
The very beginning, it's always been this way. So I have two things that I always make sure is that the employees are number one. Make sure that they're happy and engaged and enjoying their work, and then they'll make the clients happy. If they're disgruntled, they never will. So that's my first focus. But the second focus is on client services. That ultimately these are humans that we're interacting with, and humans usually have big feelings and they have expectations and they have pressures. So what we really try to cultivate is the human experience for our clients and really understanding them. There's a great book called How to Never Lose a Customer Again by Joey Coleman. And he talks about the client journey, which I think is phenomenal because it's a 8 phases, but only 2 are the sales. The next 6 are how to nurture and keep a client. But I think, honestly, client services has been number one for me, and just making sure that we stand behind our work. I was very eager when I was, of course, very hungry for all the projects because I had now taken the full leap and have a team. This is in March 2013. Like I was no longer just hustling side projects on my own with a bunch of contractors. I had a full-timer. I had a website. I had like a team of 5 people on another agency that would contract for us. And then I had one full-timer, Shane, and then Jill, which was, she's my business partner and my sister. But she also is the one that like ran all the books and all the money and all the stuff that I
Gotcha.
Right. So I'd scaled to about like we had 3 full-timers and a team of 5 that was our contract team. And that's where we were. And I was worried about projects, having enough work to have a full-timer. Right.
Sure.
And my mentor said, do really good work. Spend the extra time that you feel anxious with, that you feel like you should be doing something else, making sure the client is super happy. Just do what you have on your plate really well. And then again, monitor, keep your eye on the game that you still got to be searching for new leads and going out to, and that's where I was still really hustling, right? Going to every single networking event I could, talking to everybody I meet. And it was often like, I'm doing this. Do you have any advice? Again, it was always like, do you have advice? And then projects, maybe you can work on this client or something. Again, going into agency owner networks, right? and just talking to other people in my industry. Going to business, like there's some business coaching for CEOs, right? So I'm a CEO, even though I'm one person, right? Like, let me go. So Vistage they were always keen to make me a member. So they'll invite me to their breakfast things or whatever. So I go.
Hey,
it's too expensive for me.
Here is a secret tip for everybody listening when it comes to getting in front of a lot of qualified business owners. Get a business coach, because guess who they are coaching also? A bunch of business owners. And I got so many leads when I was involved with a business coaching program, because they had me in several times to do like presentations for these other businesses they were working with. And I got a lot of great projects and really good connections just because I was in.
Everybody in the room, LinkedIn, every single person in that room. So even if only one is going to buy all of them, you should LinkedIn. Right? Like that's the fun thing, is get their business cards or get connected with all of them. Because you never know what will come out of those meetings. But that was the hustle. That was like, I always figured like get a business card or get a LinkedIn from every single person I met. Just keep doing that, keep planting the seeds, go to events, go to every single booth, go and talk to as many people. One of the things I would do at lunches to meet new people, I would have like 4 lunches. Okay. So I'd get to the lunch early. I would get a plate. I'd put small amounts of food on my plate. I'd go and pick a table. I'd meet everybody at that table. I'd get business cards from everybody at that table, go dump my plate, get another small plate, go to another table, meet another.
Oh, that's funny.
I was at lunches at events, and I'd meet like 40 people every lunch because I would have 4 lunches, right?
Yeah, because if you did 4 lunches, Anne would be passed out in the corner over there, stuff while the event's going on.
Right? I'm on my 4th, I'm grabbing the brownie, right? So I'm like, super dessert, want to meet new people. But I'm an 11. When it comes to a scale of 1 to 10 of extrovertedness, I'm very comfortable doing that. On my CTO, she's a highly introverted, amazingly brilliant woman. We go into a room. She stands in the corner with a glass of wine, meets one person and has a really deep, intelligent conversation. I meet like 20 people in the room as I butterfly around, right? It's just, and often she'll bring a really qualified lead to the table that she just met and really had a deep, organic, real conversation. So don't feel like you have to be the butterfly extrovert and go out and do all these things. You may choose that if you're more of an introverted person, different avenues that feel comfortable. Like
that's great.
Space, just giving space for different types of people to sell. And if you're more introverted, sometimes it's having deeper, more intellectual conversations one-on-one versus me that goes to everybody.
I'm so glad you said that, because I think that is the big apprehension for most all web designers. I think most people get into web design to get out of those type of meetings. But if you are wearing every hat in your business, like it or not, you're the salesperson. So you do have to get out of your comfort zone, but you can absolutely cater your sales strategy to your personality type and to do what you enjoy. And I've found once you get out of your comfort zone a little bit, you do tend to get a little more comfortable, because I was really nervous about joining a networking group. And I was like, oh my God, something once a week. It sounds like a nightmare. Oh, it's at 7:30 in the morning. God, I really dreaded it. But once I got comfortable there and I got confident in that group, because they became my sales force for me. It wasn't just them I was trying to appeal to, it was who they knew. And that's the really big, I think an overarching thought we've kind of gone in and out of here is that when you build a network, whether it's other web designers, agencies, local businesses, connections through LinkedIn and meetups, whatever it is, they are your sales force. They may not be the clients directly. You might get some of those directly, but they become the sales force because you become that person. I cannot tell you how important that is. So I love that. And I love that you said that, because I'm sure a lot of people are not like, that would be me too. I'd probably stick with like 10 people. I might be a hybrid between super extroverted and somewhat introverted. I might be in the middle there. But I would be much more apt to like meet a bunch of people and walk around versus, but the people who are really intimidated can find just one person and really lean into that. Perfect example, our realtor that we use in my family. She was in my networking group, such a great gal. She's amazing. The first time I met her was at a big networking group of like 250 people, and she looked like a deer in the headlights. She was just in the corner, and she had just joined our networking group. We went to this big event, and she was like, oh my gosh, I don't even know what to do. I'm so just overloaded. And we ended up having a really good conversation, and we just kind of hung out. Now, I did a little bit of both, but I think me being there and having some time with her helped her feel more comfortable. And when she got involved in our smaller group, she really opened up. So I say all that to say it's okay. Like if you feel like you're an introvert, you can still sell. If you put serve over sell, I think that's really the name of the game. And I think you're a prime example of that, Anne, of your whole career, really just serving first, client relationship. And I will say, you said something a little bit ago that my business coach said when I had him on my podcast here recently in episode 101, when I asked him what's some of the best ways to build your authority and get more leads, he said, do good work. Do really good work. And I think so many people are focused on sales and getting traffic when their work sucks. And what are your thoughts on that? The importance of 100%. Making sure you do good at your craft before anything.
Oh, 100%, 100%. You know, you have to be able to do good work to make this all work. Otherwise you won't be in business. Right. And that's where we've had certain bumps in the road that we've had to grow from. But yeah, and it's definitely been about taking care of the clients. I feel like as we've evolved, there's another book I'd recommend called Giftology. And it's a great accompaniment to the Never Lose a Customer Again, because it really talks about how to skillfully gift your clients to make them feel special and heard and really valued, right? So we also do this with employees. We have a gifting program, but we have a gifting program for our clients where we give them a gift on what we call their Caniversary. So for every year, there was
nice
anniversary gift, right? So in the custom cutting board, you know, we kind of, and the Giftology book taught me to take care of the family and the family will take care of you. So you get a gift that's for the whole family, not just your point of contact. And you give a gift that's not disposable or like a gift card or food.
Yeah.
I mean, like I'm celiac and can't have dairy and generally don't like seafood, whatever. Trying to get me food is like a nightmare, right? You can't send me a gift that will work for me, right? And I've got all these allergies, right? So it really talks about how to create a customized gift. And I feel like that's part of the client journey. It's like you are a human interacting with a human, whatever level you are at, be helpful and make sure the work really does happen skillfully and then create value together, right? Yeah. And that will allow them to then, if they're really, we've had clients be like, I love you folks so much. Let me do a video testimonial for you.
Oh, beautiful.
And I'm like, okay.
Didn't even have to ask for it. Awesome.
You know, and like you have clients that are willing to go over and above. You know, if you're a web designer and you're thinking of scaling, there's a really great place called Clutch. Clutch is one of those other fishing poles we have, and we created a portfolio. And then what we do, it's like Yelp for web developers. So, but our clients actually have to give reviews and talk to Clutch and do an interview. And if projects are at a certain scale, people can just go rate you and leave comments and stuff. But getting like a 5-star review on Clutch and kind of showing those testimonials is another great way to, if you have a happy client, they'll give you a testimonial that's on Clutch. That's good for SEO. That's good for, you know, we get X number of leads from Clutch a month. And then we also know that we can use that during our sales process as we're talking to somebody like, oh, you have a really big migration project and you're really worried about, you know, budget. Here's a testimonial on Clutch, which is a third-party reviewer from another migration project that was massive and how we stayed on budget. And it goes into some depth. So there's this element of like, by taking care of your customers, they also help you sell.
Yeah.
Part of our thing is we love to love our clients so much that they naturally just refer us. We're trying to work on a more intentional ask, right? And one of the things the SEO agency did this to us, and I thought this was brilliant. I want to do this too. Was we have a 30-day check-in with new clients to see how they're doing and if their goals are getting met. We have a 45-day guarantee. So we want to make sure we're going to hit the 45-day guarantee.
Okay.
And our 45-day guarantee is to show tangible value. So whatever that means to them, we identify it early on. And then at 45 days, we hit it. And then at 90 days, this is the sales team checks in on the account. And then the account manager works through quarterly success sessions to like sit down with them. But at that 90-day, especially for, support clients, we're doing kind of like, when we're at that year mark. So we feel like we've had a year of really good traction together. And this is our comfort level. People sometimes ask earlier. At the year mark, when we're sitting down we ask them, is there anybody, we'll go through their LinkedIns and say, hey, you've got these 5-10 connections we'd love to make. Would you make an introduction to us?
Beautiful.
Okay. So we're taking a client relationship and saying, okay, you're really happy with us. Here's people that are in your LinkedIn network. And they may go, I don't know 3 of those people. We're like, okay, that's cool. Still make an introduction. if you don't know them, but I know these two people really well, right? And then you have a dialogue and then you get a warm referral. So it is kind of like with those nurtured clients that are really happy, they're humans and they're friends with you in the end, right? They're business friends. So asking for like, hey, do you know anybody else that would benefit from our services? If they're happy with you, they're like, yes, let me introduce you to these 3 people. Right?
Listen,
and that intentionality is comes from the very beginning of you hustle to get them, keep them. It was a lot of work to get them.
Yes. You hustle to get them, keep them. And then it is true. If you have a client and it goes really well and the project goes great, you want more of those type of clients and projects, and your vibe attracts your tribe. So people who you work with are often going to be connected with other people like them. And if they're not referring you, it may not be intentional. It's just because you didn't ask them or they didn't think about it. But that I cannot understate the importance of this, because this is one of the most important sales tips that I have. And that is to just ask, just like you said, Ann, just ask, hey, we're looking to work with some more businesses in this industry, or I saw that you are connect with some people. Can you do an introduction? And more often than not, your client will be happy to do that. And then if you have nurtured that relationship, if you did a really good job, suddenly they become your biggest advocate, and they are like they're almost like your salesperson that you don't have to pay, they're paying you and they're your salesperson. That is, I think, truly where it's at. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I think it's a very underrated, and I understand. I didn't think about that when I got started, but once I started doing that, I thought, oh my God, why haven't I been doing this for years?
For sure. And it's interesting because our salespeople are busy because we have, 6-7 years of track record of delivery, right? So it's just so important as you scale to keep those relationships. And you know what? The best part is that we had a client website that went over budget by 2,000 hours. Okay. It almost buried us. It was awful, right? Big migration. And you know what we did? We were in the trenches with them. We owned it. We didn't apologize because we just misestimated, but we owned it and we got it across the finish line. And you know what? They're still our client and they're one of our best references because we have a reference that says, here's a project that went massively over budget and here's how we owned it. Are we going to do that again? No, we're not going to do that again. But, just to give that trust to that person is one of those elements of like a salesperson has to take them through the pipeline. One of that places where they get stuck is in that like closing the price and feature negotiation, getting them to contracting. And the biggest thing there is building trust. And so sometimes it's showing your underbelly of how you've screwed up and how you made it right. And if a client can talk to somebody where you screwed up and you made it right, and you've been making it right for years since, that is a relationship you can rely on, because that is where we built so much trust that, we screwed up, we owned it, but we also have taken care of them for the next, they've been our clients since 2013, the last 8 years, right? After a big kerfuffle, right? We worked with them and they're still, having that as a reference is gold.
Huge.
Because then the client says okay, there might be a screw up, but if they do screw up, they're going to own it and they're going to make sure that we're okay. And they're going to take care of our clients first. So, sometimes leveraging those blunders that happen when you're scaling, if things don't break, if clients don't fire you, you're doing something wrong, because you have to have those painful moments in scaling a business to learn what you're not doing right.
Yeah, that's a great point.
If you don't have those, you're not taking enough risks, right? You've got to get out there a little bit more. But I know that every entrepreneur has felt the bumps and bruises of being an entrepreneur, right? It's not always a smooth ride, but it is can you take that and work it into a win somehow and build on from that creates that. So
that's beautiful. Well, Ann, I know you got a call coming up shortly, so I want to make sure I get you out on time here. We could chat for 3 hours, but I have a final question for you. I do want to mention something just really briefly on the whole gift thing, because I've got on my desk here for everyone watching a little coaster that has my logo and stuff. This is, I think, a prime example of a gift from one of my colleagues. I was on his podcast, my buddy James Rose, who has a podcast called Agency Highway, and he sent me this little gift. Now, if you're a web designer and you send something like that, it really is a great way to stay top of mind, because I use it every day. And I unintentionally think about James almost every day in his brand, because I set my cup on my little coffee, my little gift he gave me. So my little coaster. something like that, that's kind of my challenge for everybody. Try some sort of gift like that to your best clients and see where it goes. And it may take a little bit of time, but something like that really is super valuable. I'm sure there's a whole other episode we could do on gifts, but I do have one final question for you. And before we do, though, before we get to that, where would you like my audience to go check you out at? Do you want them to go to your website, maybe LinkedIn, a certain social media outlet? Where would you like my audience to find out more about you?
Sure. I'm always happy to help any budding entrepreneur. It's part of like my mission in my work is to help specifically females. I have a soft spot and our non-binary community, but males, of course, I'm always happy to help as well. The best place is actually LinkedIn. So if you Google Ann Kanopi LinkedIn, it's Kanopi. You'll find me right away and do a connection request. This is a great way for you to network with me if you want small projects. Because I got them. If you reach out to me with an authentic message that says, I heard you on Josh Hall's podcast. I'd love to connect, learn more about how, we can support each other's business, whatever you want to say, like some authentic message, I'll be there for you. And I'd love to chat. And then, of course, if you wanted to check out our website, it's kanopi.com, Kanopi.com. Watch out for a Reimagine coming soon.
Oh, I'm excited. Well, I think it's a beautiful site now, but I'm excited to see what you guys do. We'll put the connect with you on LinkedIn as kind of the main call to action on the show notes. We've got a lot of great show notes for this one. We've got Scott Sambucci's website we'll link to. We've got some awesome books that we talked about that I'll link to. I'm going to read Never Lose a Customer Again. I'm excited about checking that out. Yeah. So final question for you, Ann. Talk to the introvert really quick. What would you recommend the introvert web designer who is running their business and is just scared about sales? Would you have one maybe tip or advice for somebody who, or maybe not even just an introvert, but somebody who's just nervous about sales because it seems daunting? What would be your one bit of advice for them?
Again, I think what you said was really skillful, that it's to serve, not to sell. Like, honestly, I don't sell. I work to help clients. And if they're not a good fit, it's okay. I think for the introvert, the biggest thing is to be, if you're going to have a discussion or something like that, just give you enough time to prepare yourself. I feel like COVID has opened up the ability to do things online. And I feel that's a really good space where if you wanted to start creating content and that's kind of your business development tactics, that's a great place to start. Do, snack size content snippets, right? Just, hey, here's a little helpful hint. I'm going to do a little video screencast and build a list by just kind of going into, like a really great place to network is the WP, like WordPress meetups. Okay. They're all online right now and they all have Slack chats, right? So you can join a Slack chat. It's a very safe place as an introvert. So you can kind of reach out asynchronously. But what they have is a lot of them have an app that we use at work called Coffee and Donuts that pairs you with random people. And you set up for like a 10-minute coffee in the community and kind of just meeting other people in the WordPress community through these donut chats at WordPress meetup events is a nice safe space where you're kind of randomly paired with somebody. So you're not having to go find them. And it's a one-to-one interaction. Because I feel like introverts, another great book is called Quiet, The Secret Power of Introverts, which was really great for me as an extrovert to read to support the introverts in my life. One of my Kanopians, Jason Savino, came and gave me this book one time. He was like, you need to read this. Because 80% of Kanopians are introverts or ambiverts, as you said, like kind of that middle of the way. But that's really, if you wanted to go like as a place just to meet other WordPress people, which often have projects to exchange, which often have people they might know talent, right? Again, it's lots of different ways to meet people. But as if you're kind of like that solo WordPress person, those meetup spaces are phenomenal just to have that asynchronous chats and,
Well, now we're getting into psychology, but I had heard recently that the term introverts and extroverts was actually coined more recently, and that everyone has a bit of introversion or extroversion, depending on what situation you're in, which makes total sense. I've seen people being really shy, but if they're comfortable with who they're around, they're like a completely different person. So that makes a lot of sense too. We'll save that one for the next podcast. We'll talk about introverts versus extroverts, and we'll see where that goes. Well, Ann, thanks so much for coming on again. I told you we'd keep this under an hour. I should have known that was a white lie because we could chat forever. So thanks again for some awesome tips on sales and pulling the curtain back on what you guys have done. And I'm sure this won't be the last one.
Sounds good. Thanks, Josh. See you soon.
See ya.
Hey guys and gals, just wanted to pop in with a couple things before you head out. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to this podcast. I would love to hear your feedback, and it will also help other web designers find the show. Be sure to check out the show notes for this episode. Just go to joshhall.co, click on podcasts, and search this episode number, and you'll find all the links, descriptions, and resources we talked about. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, and you'll be notified when the next episode is live. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys on the next episode.